Why, hello, Internet! My name is Prunk, and today we're going to be fixing Dungeon Dice Monsters. Now, this game has a special place in my heart, mostly because I was too poor to play it as a kid, and my goddamn rich ass friend Kenny got to play all the figures, and he got all the cards, and he just had everything that he could possibly want because his parents went to law school and loved him, and he was emotionally abused and suppressed all of his emotions until he was 33. What are we talking about again? Oh, yeah, Dungeons Dice Monsters. Nowadays, the game is just a flash in the pan for nostalgia. The only real way people would be able to play this game, due to its scarcity and expense, is by having a rich kid in a few subdivisions over from you. Or you just play the Game Boy Advance version. Emulators are great. You can kind of guess which one I was. Growing up, I loved Yu-Gi-Oh! I loved video games. I loved board games. So this was kind of a home run for me. But this game is easily broken as all hell and has its flaws. And outside of price, this game was a headache to play, a headache to set up. It was a lot. But gameplay wise, it was actually really fun. There was a lot of good in this system, in this board game, and it is really disappointing that Konami just could never really get this game up and running because there is still a die-hard fan base in this game. Now, if you're watching this channel or watching this episode, you probably have some kind of idea what Dungeon Dice Monsters were. You probably have seen the anime if you've seen Yugioh. I had to think of what that name of the movie was. It was Dungeon Dice Monsters had its all anime little series for like 3 or 4 episodes, and it was phenomenal. It just opened up your eyes as a kid to be like, wow, Yu-Gi-Oh is really expanding into this cool new world, and we get to play with dice instead of just cards, and this is going to be really cool and unique. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about what exactly like Dungeon Dice Monster really was, but to give you the basics, Dungeon Dice Monsters was just really a dice-driven tactical board game made in like 2001. The idea is pretty simple: summon monsters, create a dungeon path, and vanquish your enemy's heart points. Why not life points? Because Konami doesn't need to make sense back in the 2000s or now. Yeah, I've seen their ban lists. So how do you do that? Again, I feel like if you've probably seen this video, you've probably know some basics, but you're basically just rolling the same number of crests on a dice that will allow you to summon monsters to inhabit and create a dungeon. It's pretty neat. However, it's easier said than done. This is the first major problem with DDM, is just that you're rolling and all your moves are based on 3 dice that you roll. And putting out level 1 monsters is super easy because just matching a 6-sided die with 4 of the sides all saying 1, allowing you to summon a creature, is pretty easy and statistically common. But the problem lies in the complete major swings that the more expensive monsters really have. A 4-star monster is the game's highest cost monster in this, and on your 6-sided dice, you need the equivalent to rolling like a 6 on 2 of the 3 dice that you're rolling. Do you know what the odds are? Well, I don't. I'm not smart enough for that. So here's a weird formula that I had to Google. Yeah, I don't know what this means either. This is just a lot of numbers, and I was not good at math. But basically, what I understand is 5 in 72 chances, which is even harder for my 8-year-old brain to understand because I don't even get that as a 33-year-old. I'm a grown-ass man, and I still think that a flip of a coin, oh, well, this coin landed 4 times on heads. I got it. It's like tails is due to come up. I'm gonna bet $100. Tails is coming up next, and then I lose it because it's still a 50-50 chance, you idiot. There's no biases in luck. But I digress. The frustrating mechanic always irked me. Sure, summoning big characters should be harder, but it shouldn't just be luck. That's just bad game design. And it's one thing I pride myself more than Kenny is that I'm pretty good at game design. But before we fix that problem, I think we should look at the rest of the dice sides. We have the summon crest, which we just talked about, but then there's attack, defense, magic, trap, and my least favorite, movement. It is so bad. Movement sucks in this game. And 100% is the slowest mechanic and why this game feels so grindy. One roll of the dice equals one space of movement. We're playing this on a 13 by 19 grid, which means I basically need at least 13 hits of movement crests in order to move across the board minimum. Now, there is some like dimensioning things that you can kind of do, and just getting summon crests will help you proceed and make the dungeon closer and closer. So, but overall, you do need movement, and you need a lot of it often, unless you just are able to zerg your way to the DM before your opponent can do anything. But outside of movement, there are magic and trap dice, which magic is basically used to make monster abilities, which is misleading because they should just be called ability crest. That's foreshadowing. And then there are traps, which are used to play trap stuff. I don't know. Honestly, I've never used them in the Game Boy games. They are often mostly useless, just kind of just pointless. So basically, we have a game with a strong core in creating a dungeon and progressing through a and fighting your opponent's monsters. And the core of gameplay of this is actually really fun. The rolling the dice, though, is the most frustrating mechanic of this dice game, though, and we're gonna have to fix it. First thing to tackle is the dice count. In the original DDM, you get 3 dice per turn, and that's boring and slow, and not getting me to make more movement more quickly as I would like. So we're going to do 5 dice instead. Now, that's a game with chest hair. 5 dice versus 3? Whoo! All right, we're basically doubling our entire like dice pool because of this change. So already we've doubled the speed of the game. So when we get those 5 dices, I want to add strategy though. And so what if I told you you can pick out the dice that you want for this game, similar to how DDM does it in the Game Boy version, but we're going to keep it a little bit more simplified. In Dungeon Dice Monsters, you get 3 of each type of crest, meaning that you have 4, and you kind of roll out what you need to roll. I'm pretty sure that you just grab the dice from the original game, and you pick out which ones you're wanting to throw. In our version, I am kind of putting this into a dice deck. This dice deck is going to be composed of 15 dice. Now, you can't just grab 15 of the same dice. We're going to do it by fives. So they're going to be 5 different types of dice, and you can have a 5 of each dice max up to 15. So you can go 3, 3, 3, 3. You can do 5, 5, 5. You can do 5, 1, 4, something, whatever. Any way you want to build this dice deck to make it feel like you have control over how your dice deck is going to strategize, I think is really important. And it gives the person playing this more strategy to really consider what's my current pool? Is it better for me to risk and go with these high cost characters and have like the high crest of dice to try and earn stars? Or should I just play a bunch of the little ones and just get consistent small little jumps while I'm playing aggro characters that are only costing me 2 or 3? The strategy is in that dice pool right there. You're already thinking about how you want to build your dice deck. Not to mention that the Game Boy Advance version just does it in a really, really strange way. Like every monster in the Game Boy game has their own unique dice that can roll, which is more faithful to the anime, but super hard to balance, and it's just too much. I'm not dealing with that. If we're gonna make this into a physical game, then we want to make sure this is simplified a lot. So we do keep the basic dice that the game provided us. We have a tier 1 dice, which gives you 4 1-stars on one side, along with a 2-star movement and a 2-star attack. What I mean by that is those ones will count towards two towards your crest pool, whereas the 1-stars are all applying 1 crest to that summoning pool that we're going to talk about. This is the only dice in the game that gives you duplicates and allows you to get speed at values of 2 and attack at values of 2. So you can kind of make that trade of, should I play a bunch of like 1 dice and then have the possibility to gain 2 attack or 2 speed more often? Or do I spread out my dice pool a little bit more and go for the 2 crests and try and summon more monsters more frequently, and then getting attack and movement less frequently? Now, you heard me say about accumulating stars and those crests and summoning crests. Unlike our bad version where you're spamming trying to roll 2 of the same sides, anything that you roll goes into the crest pool. So in order to summon monsters this time around, you don't have to match 2 dice and summon something. Your stars are just collected, and you can spend those stars to summon your monsters right away. This is going to help stop the grind It's going to make sure that each of your rolls feel valuable because you are consistently making progress to what you need to do. Yeah, you may have only rolled 2 stars this turn, but that's 2 more stars that you didn't have. And next turn, maybe you rolled a 4 and now you can summon a 6 drop. So, like, it's going to feel like you are still progressing, even if you're getting quite the rolls that you want. It's always feeling some kind of reward, and you're always moving the game forward. We're not at a standstill at this point. There should overall be a lot less of just roll 5 dice, or in the original game, roll 3 dice and pass because you didn't get in a single attack crest and you just rolled a bunch of like 1 star crest things that didn't actually let you summon something. The game actually will keep progressing. So now basically you have the option. Do I save up my star crest and summon a big dragon that way I can go in and slay everything in my path? Or do I play this cute undead elephant? The choice is really yours. Okay, what? So we fixed the summoning mechanic. What else we got? Well, movement. Movement is the big one. Movement is probably the most frustrating part about original DDM. It is just the most grindy aspect other than trying to summon the 4-star monsters, which are never actually needed. So movement is now based on a monster's level. A 4-star creature can now move 4 spaces in the dungeon. That means that the easier a monster can be summoned, the slower it is in progressing through that dungeon. This makes it so it's less threatening to your opponent's like dice master. But when you drop that big ass dragon at level 8, who can football rush your opponent's DM, it feels like it's powerful and game ending. Like a level 8 character should feel like. It is your boss monster at that point. It's what you're building up this game to put onto the field. You can drop it turn 1 if you really wanted to, but if it's not able to go and travel too far into the dungeon or take out any of the characters, why would you waste your crest when you can be building the dungeon path with a bunch of your little guys? If you have played the GBA game, you know that basically all of the level 4 monsters in the game, which was the max level, were basically horrible. I basically just made an aggro deck where I was buffing up level 1 drops and was able to take out every single 4 drop in like 1 or 2 hits, no issue. Like, it was building the dungeon fast, so I had the control of the board, and having them run through the dungeon, slaying everybody with the buffs that I was giving them. It's cool. It was aggro, and against an AI opponent, it felt fine, but I feel like we can do more. And I think that the movement with the levels associating that, it means that you have to trade off. Do you want to throw out and take control of the dungeon board by spamming a bunch of low-cost characters that will probably die really easily? Or do I want to do more of a mid-range approach and get myself just enough pathing so that way when you connect, I can drop my 8-drop and head straight to the DM and slay everything in my path? There is a lot of strategy to that. And I feel like it's already a balanced mix between how you want to build things and what you don't want to do. Overall, you have field presence versus board presence, a bunch of little guys versus one big guy. We have that as a core balance in this mechanic right off the bat. The next thing is I want to talk about magic and trap crests, which we're overall changing. Ability crests are the now new thing. Combining the two allows us to play spells and traps from our hand as well as activate monster effects on the field. This is one less crest that you need to roll in order to play things, which means it's one less dead crest if you're not playing something that's important with it. And these abilities help because you gain control of the board while movement and attack are still needed to finish up the game. So this is just an extra element that is really important that you have to focus on of like, I need to make sure that I can trigger my monster abilities, but I'm also going to need to stack my dice pool with the movement and attack in crest or really manage the stuff that I have while triggering these effects. Having your monster effects associated with the ability crest makes perfect sense, but really having your spells and traps all tied to that as well, again, it just gives them a layer of importance. And this is kind of where we add one extra dice to the pool called the utility dice. The utility dice is still everything on this dice is still one-sided, or you get one crest for each roll. However, there are 3 chances to get a ability crest on this one-sided dice. So you got 50% of this dice dedicated to ability, the other one to attack, movement, and defense. But after that, there's not too many core changes that I really want to make with the dice rolling system. A lot of the game is pretty solid, but I feel like these changes allow us to really experience what DDM should have been without the grind and without the frustration. Or at least some of the frustration. It's still rolling dice. You're going to get frustrated. Now we go on to the other big fix that we've done. This game should feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! It is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Game after all, associated with Yu-Gi-Oh! In some ways. And I want to make sure it feels like Yu-Gi-Oh! Without really losing out on what DDM should have been. DDM cards were there as kind of like a placeholder for what the statue and the figure should have been, but they weren't that impactful other than just giving you the stats. In DDM2, each player will have a card deck of 15, and of that 15, you have 10 monsters and 5 spells or traps. This is a Highlander format, so you can only have 10 unique monsters. No duplicates are allowed. You start with 3 cards in your deck. If you have no monsters in your opening hand, then feel free to mulligan. I do feel like that's important. And each turn you will draw another card, which is allowing you to open up to more plays. Sometimes you just play what the hand is given. When you draw into an important key piece that you might need, you got it. But otherwise, you are playing through the entire field, both of what you're given and how you utilize what you were given right off the bat, and what you built, is it going to be helpful for it. Oh, and each of these cards are going to look like actual Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And what was up with these artworks that they did for it? Everything just has this weird gritty background. I guess you want to keep it in theme, but come on. Just use the existing artwork for certain cards, and I don't think anybody would have been mad. Now, each turn, like I said, you draw your cards, and you will have the card to have their stats, which is basically just their star level, which is also their speed, their attack and defense. And now that they all look like actual Yu-Gi-Oh cards, because I just use a card maker, and also I don't think you need to change that, they have a key change in compared to normal Yu-Gi-Oh on how we are playing at power levels in like the tens. I could have done this like 1 through 10 instead versus like 10, 20, 30, 40. But ones look bad on the card, and if you haven't noticed by the lack of effort I do in these videos, I'm a stickler for making things look pretty. Now, how combat works though in comparison is your attack value always deals damage to your defense value. If your attack if you attacked, you take damage, and that damage is subtracted from your to your opponent's defense. Attack minus defense equals remaining defense. If your opponent's monster hits 0, the monster is destroyed. Doesn't matter if that monster is stronger in attack than you, it always hits attack minus defense, which is how I feel like normal card games should be. Now, we didn't really talk about the defense crests previously, so what do you do with those with the rolling around, since you can't actually put them in like defense mode or defend with those crests previously? They're just healing crests now. Every time you spend a defense crest, you heal up by 10. So if you've taken damage, if you couldn't get one shot from that character or something, you have something to heal that character up. So one-shotting is really important, so that way, or it's just, if you can't one-shot it, at least you're dwindling down their resources, and it does give defense cards a little bit of a boost. Also, if you've ever played GBA version, if they just put like the Millennium Shield directly in front of their like Dungeon Master, you can't do anything if they have 100 defense crests. The game's just at a standstill, and you're just waiting it out. So if you can't dimension past it, and that character is just sitting there and they have too many defense crests, you basically lose. You can't beat it, or you can't win it. You're just tied forever because nothing's breaking through this 40 defense Millennium thing. Now, damage is always being taken, so the game state is always progressing in some way. They're eventually going to run out of defense crests on their turn, which means the game is going to stop being grindy, and they have to do something and deal with that attacking monster in some form. So that's how I'm going to fix Dungeon Dice Monsters, guys. And luckily for you, you guys don't really have to wait long. I have a working demo of this game up and running on Tabletop Simulator right now as you're watching this video. It is my hope that you guys do give it a try. I loved original Dungeon Dice Monsters, but it had its flaws, and I feel like this version of the game is what DDM should have really been. It is strategic, it's easy to get into, and it captures Yu-Gi-Oh's gameplay in a new and exciting way. At the moment of writing this script, I have included 2 decks, a Yugi and a Kaiba structure deck. The game does need more playtesting and balancing. I've only been working on this one for about 2 weeks, but I do feel like I've struck gold here with this core design. I've had a couple playtesters really test and dive into this and give me feedback and figure out what works. And I didn't have to change much. this game still feels like DDM. It's just those core changes that we've done just make an overall better experience, and I'm really hoping that you guys give it a try. If the video does well and there's general interest in the content and you guys want to see more content for it, then I will gladly keep working on it. I will be taking advice, feedback, changes. The game's still early made. There's bound to be balance changes that will have to be done. There are bound to be broken rules or misunderstood what cards should be doing. I try my best to make sure I'm not breaking anything right off the bat, but I've already broken it once. So keep active on the posts. Comment on the workshop page. I will read and see everything eventually and update things according to community feedback and see what they like. The full rulebook is located in the game, and I plan on bringing some gameplay videos to the channel eventually for it. So if you do want to support the game and the channel, leave a comment below, like, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. And I hope to catch you guys next time for the League of Legends one. But we'll just edit that part out. Okay, nobody wants to play a MOBA board game that I've been working on for like 3 years. They do? What do you mean it's on workshop already?